share the link, please, so that I can.
Good morning and welcome to all the participants and speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we are right now on the 5th day of our online training on LNG business strategy. We have covered most of the areas of LNG sector in last 4 days. Today we will be covering the sessions on gas hubs and exchanges and the potential of inter-regional trade. I would again ask all the participants that you are free to pose any questions during the presentations or after the presentation. We will address those queries to the experts. Secondly, you may also have the opportunity to ask the question directly from the experts, and we will definitely address your request. Secondly, all the presentations and the contents of this online training are available on our website, and you can access those presentations through there. Plus, we would also upload the recordings of all the 5 days of this online training on our website by today evening. So first we have a presentation from on gas hubs and exchanges. The contents of the presentation include key requisites for the development of a gas hub, major gas hubs, gas exchanges and their role in growth of gas markets, feasibility of a South Asian gas hub. The presentation would be delivered by Mr. R.K. Garg, and I would now request Mr. Garg to start his presentation. Over to you, sir.
Is it my presentation is visible?
Yes, sir.
It's visible. That's nice. Very good morning to all. For these continued sessions, I think today is the last day, and by this time, I think you have understood the entire gamut of LNG business, including the pricing and trade, which was explained in our earlier presentation. During this pricing presentation, we have been using the certain terms, and also we have been mentioning that there are various hubs, liquid hub, where the trading happens freely and lot of liquidity in the market is there. Today, I will try to give in detail what is really the gas hub is and what is exchange, how the trading on the gas hub and how the trade facilitated by the exchange for this gas in the global business. We will also try to understand what are the key requisites of the development of a gas hub, which are necessary to have a liquid and market-oriented gas trading platform. We will discuss the major gas hubs in the global currently in operating, and which would definitely we'll talk about Henry Hub, we will talk NBP, we will talk the TTF. TTF is Cattle Transfer Facility in Netherlands, NBP in UK, and Henry Hub in US, and how they operate, what are their ingredients basically in those hubs. And also we'll discuss that how this gas exchange and hub can improve the growth of the gas market, and what are the major things we can see the development taking place all over. And we'll also discuss that what is the feasibility of having a South Asian gas hub, especially for our SAARC region, and we'll also just briefly tell you about the experience that India has just recently introduced a gas exchange. So this is going to be my contents of the presentation for today. So first, I think we should try to understand what is the difference between gas trading hub and gas exchange. Generally, these terms are used in normal parlance that everybody thinks the gas hub and gas exchange are one thing. It is not really. And gas is not, this exchange is not identical to a hub. So one should have an understanding what is gas trading hub, what is gas exchange. So that hub, basically the nomenclature which has come, concept has come from the aviation industry, especially from in US, when the first gas hub was created, and then this name was coined. And like in aviation industry, where multiple airline owner, they have a hub and spoke model. Similarly, for the gas in US, when it started physically trading, that hub concept has come. So gas trading hub is basically a place where title ownership of the natural gas is exchanged between number of buyer and seller. So I think few things important here. It is a place where the ownership is transferred of natural gas, and there are numbers of gas supplier and buyer. And so this is the normal definition generally used for gas trading hub. Whereas the gas exchange is facilitating the trade and manage the credit and the volume risk and the price risk. So this is the job of a gas exchange, is facilitate the trade, so that and keep the transaction which is exchange between the party anonymous for buying and selling of this gas, and all related the counterparty transactions are basically related to exchange. So exchange is the platform where trading happens, which remain confidential. Name of the parties are unknown to each other, and very transparently the business goes on, like a share exchange, like a stock exchange. It's like the same gas exchange. And hub is a place where title is transferred and where a number of buyer and seller trade the exchange their molecules with each other. So specifically an exchange is not exclusive to a hub. So it is not that one hub, one exchange. No. So it is not exclusive to a hub, and there can be multiple exchanges trading on the same product from the hub. So there could be 2, 3 exchanges, 4, 5 exchanges, and trading the same product on the same hub. And exchange could trade future from different hubs also, and one hub's future could also be traded on several exchanges. So it means it is not that it is only for hub and exchange one. So there could be different exchanges trading the same product on the same hub or different hubs. So this is the general concept. We will discuss in detail as we go along. So before going into the hub and exchanges, I think we will try to understand what is happening in the emerging gas market where we are, and specifically in our region as well as in Asian region. Some of the emerging economies, that government continue to emphasize the security of supply objective over economics. So it means because this is purely because of the shortage of gas, and it is a social objective the governments are meeting to the requirements of general public, and that is why they are keeping that gas in their control and deciding on the pricing, and market is not free. Second, there is an issue here also because limited natural gas market, and also pipeline trade is not happening, and especially in our region there is no pipeline connectivity, and that is becoming a constraint for having a trade between these regions of the gas. So to understand how this global gas business, where hubs are there or exchanges are now operating, what are the minimum prerequisites for having a trading hub or an exchange? So one is, conceptually, it is that the government is not involved, or government keeps away from natural gas of his even policy making. They do the policy direction, and so the shift from the direct policy making and the market involvement to market monitoring, and that is also through an independent agency, that is a regulator. So government is shifting that activity to a regulator who is independent to the government, and they are taking care of that activity of the trade by drafting necessary regulations and also monitoring those regulations and also facilitating those regulations. And by that, they are giving equal opportunity to all the entities and keeping foremost in the mind that interest of the consumer. So there is no anti-competitive activity goes on. So government is hands-off approach of the government on the natural gas. This is the one major prerequisite for the natural gas, and that is what we have seen in US when it started, and same thing is through regulation it is happening in Europe. Second activity, I think you have heard in earlier presentation that we wanted to have a separate activity of transport of gas and the commercial activity. So buying and selling should be separated out from the infrastructure, which is the transportation of gas. Uh, because virtually this gas business as started, it was vertical monopoly, where whosoever has built the pipeline, they were only trading and selling the gas. So that activity, this is seen that when it is there, there is no level playing field, and there are very few players that they are able to trade the natural gas. So the independent transport entity, if there, they will levy fair and indiscriminate transmission fee and provide access to all the shippers, all the users. So this is also one of the important prerequisite for having a trading hub or an exchange. Uh, this is whether it happens physically, or whether it happens through maybe a subsidiary holding relationship, whatever the mode is there, but there have to be independent, and there is no day-to-day management or day-to-day business should be handled by this entity of each other, and there is no otherwise there will be conflict of interest. Third important part is that the price of natural gas at the wholesale level is deregulated by the government. So it means the prices are fixed by the natural market forces, and let the market set the wholesale prices level of the natural gas, and not by the government. That is very, very important and very prerequisite, especially when in our countries, like until we have a level playing field, and also the pricing are fixed by the market, you can't have a trading exchange or hub to operate when we have the different pricing in the region. Another important thing that there should be a sufficient network capacity for transmitting the gas, and that why it is important, because sufficient network capacity will ensure that no separate islands that behave according to their own supply demand dynamics. So if we have multiple pipeline sufficient capacity, then the trade would flow without any restriction. So this is also an important prerequisite for a natural gas hub and exchange. This is also we discussed a lot of time, that non-discriminatory access of the network. I think this is important. When the molecules are traded, then they should be transported without any hindrance. So there should be non-discriminatory access. So it should be given that freely that infrastructure is available to all. Another important thing, that though the physical trade can happen without financial institution, but if we really want a liquidity in the market, the involvement of the financial institution, those who will provide the tools for risk management for customers. We discussed that risk management in the earlier session, where the involvement of the financial institution is important, and they smooth out and optimize the revenue stream from their activity. The network, basically what is happening, that if we have the financial institutions are also there in the trade, so they will give the confidence to the market, and there are more and more players in the market. When they buy and sell will happen, and they will provide the risk management tools and functions to the trader as well as other participants to help in their trading business. Another important is significant domestic production and storage facility. This is also important, because if you do not have domestic production, then you are totally dependent on LNG. That is also an issue. But anyway, we'll discuss that further, whether really domestic production is a constraint. And gas storage facility, because the molecules have, if there is a limited space in the pipeline, so if we have separate another gas storage facility, that would be good, and that we will see that in other hubs how it is managed. Market size, the significant volume the gas have to be traded. It is not that very small quantity is there on this, and there are a number of participants. So that is a competitive number of participants player in the market. And another thing I think we have seen in India, that there is a issue about taxation. I think this may be in other countries also, where we have different states and province, and where they levy different kind of taxes on buying and selling of gas. Rates are different, and their mechanism is different. And when you sell the gas from one state to another state, another province, in that system is distorted, and a real price is unknown. So these are the important prerequisite for having a efficient gas trading hub or exchange. I'll use the word efficient. It is not that we can't have a trading hub or we can't have an exchange. Yes, you can, but it may not be that efficient, and at that what it generally is required by the market. So what goes on within the gas hub? If we talk about physical hub, it is very efficient, well connected, and provide all the necessary services to allow the transfer of ownership. Physical support, typical services at some hub is transportation. In any case, wheeling is provided, parking, loaning, and peaking. These kind of services are also provided at the hub, and where traders and plus those who are trading in the business, they can use these services, parking their quantity, loaning their quantity to someone, and at the time of peaking, that can be used. Storage services are provided, as I mentioned, in the pipeline. Balancing is very important function is required to make, because input and output have to be balanced in the system. Compression also, title transfer, of course, it happens, and one hub to another hub also transfer happens. So these are the various activities goes within the hub. So physical operation at the hub and pipeline should not be barrier for development markets, because it is important. How gas trading occurs in general also, and through electronic also, the buyer and seller meet to initiate a trade. There is a quantity, there is a price, delivery obligation, delivery location. This is generally how the trade happen, and they bilaterally they also trade like this, or they can go to the exchange and post their quantity, price, location, and the exchange then determine the who are the buyer, and accordingly that is trade happens. And then they arrange the pipeline for receipt and delivery of using this whatever the contracted capacity, and nominate the schedule for the volume with the pipeline, and which can be changed if it is required. So mostly this trade happens maybe for a month, maybe for a day, maybe for a week, maybe for a bi-monthly. So there are various I think we'll discuss when I will go actual trading of that what is there. And price reporting is important, because on the exchange, when exchange is in function, that reporting and transparently and immediate the information to the general public about the pricing is very important. I think this is the reporting agency's work, and which is required for exchange. So who are the parties who involved in this gas trading, when especially we talk about exchange? Government, we know that they have the role only for a policy direction, not for day-to-day operation, not day-to-day regulation, and they keep themselves away from the day-to-day activities for the gas. Regulator role is important, because regulator frames the regulations for the trade, and for the even for creating an exchange, the regulation would provide how the exchange to be set up, and how they function, and what are the checks and balances of the exchange to work. They monitor the trade by the information regularly sent by the various parties, facilitate the trade. The regulator could be one, could be two. One regulator could be monitoring the molecules of gas, and that activity is doing. And second regulator would be doing a derivative transactions monitoring or activity of regulating that. Like in India, we currently we have only the physical gas trading exchange, not a financial. If the financial would come, whether the derivative activity would be done by the PNGRB or whether it is done by the security regulator. So that is a debate to be settled. So it could be one regulator who is monitoring and regulating both the transaction or different regulator. Another important parties to this trade is buyer and seller, traders, and financial operator. We discussed. The financial operator is basically those who provides a link between buyers and traders, and have a trade on a speculative or a risk management tools and services provided. Infrastructure, those who own the infrastructure, pipeline owner, storage facility who own it, or LNG terminal owner. So these are the parties who are party also to the gas trading exchange and hubs when trade happens. Brokers also important party for this, especially for exchange, and maybe in the OTC exchange, over the counter when the trade happens. They mediate between the market parties and thus simplify the search of a counterparties for buy and sell and help create an awareness of the deals. Other three important, I think we need to understand more in detail about hub operator, transmission system operator, which is TSO, and third is the gas exchange. I think I'll take these three in separate slide each. What is the role of a TSO? TSO operate gas transmission system. So gas transmission system remains under the control of a TSO. It is away from the owner of a pipeline. Pipeline owner basically operate the pipeline, but all the activity with respect to transmission, or they own the pipeline, but transmission related nomination, scheduling, balancing, this all activity remains with the TSO. He accepts the flow and trade nomination from the system user. In case of a virtual trading point, I will discuss in detail when we go, they facilitate through entry exit. They also provide the title transfer services, and they balance the system, which is very, very important role the TSO plays. So TSO ensure that the system remain physically balanced and manage the capacity to and from the hub and administer the transfer of the ownership. So this is very, very important, I think, and TSO have to be independent, and his role is well defined and very, very important party in this trade. Another is the hub operator. Sometimes these services of hub operator services are also provided by the TSO. So not necessary that always they have to be two separate, but it could be, and some services, some market, the TSO provide the hub operator services. It is basically a platform for registration of the over-the-counter deal, and they accept the notice from the exchange for the exchange-based trade and provide title transfer and matching services, ensure trade firmness through backup and down, runs balancing activity and market surveillance and reporting. So basically, few functions of the hub operator and TSO, you will find some similarity. That may be the reason that certain markets are using for the same services as TSO. So it provides hub service agreement like wheeling, parking, ensure contractual firmness, as I mentioned earlier, facilitate transfer of the gas, and stimulate standard product for development. Standard product, I think we'll discuss that. Gas, it is daily contract or weekly contract, and different type of contracts that is traded. So the role of exchange. So exchange basically stands between the trade. So it is a central counterparty. It is between buyer and seller, and they allows the anonymity of the transaction. So it is not known who is the buyer, who is the seller. They reduce and remove counterparty risk. So that is the major function of an exchange, and ensure also the prices are reported immediately, regularly to the market, and they which enables the standard product to be cleared. So one function is a central counterparty. It is a clearing and credit management that they manage. They notified the trade to the hub operator or TSO, and they are licensed and regulated by the regulator, whether it is a finance regulator or it's a gas regulator or it is a one regulator. And they also do the market surveillance and reporting. It's an important function for them. And in some market, even the bilateral trading platform is also provided by the exchange. So these are the important parties that we discussed. Now we'll see what are the important factors so that there is a liquidity on the gas exchange. One is the market size. So market size should be such that it's enough and where the trade can flourish. It is not very small size. It's a market size to be generally it's a big market size. When we talk about 300, so so for on that, all the exchanges, say NYMEX is providing that transaction. So it is the market size is very big for that. Similarly, the number of participants, as we discussed, are many. I think the important point I just wanted to highlight is the churn factor. Churn factor is the ratio between the volume traded on the exchange and the physical delivery. Physical delivery and the work, say one molecule or whatever the one contract of a transaction, it can trade multiple times before the actual delivery happens. So that is a churn factor. If we have more churn in the trade, it means there is a more liquidity. So for a commodity trading, generally the churn factor is considered around 10 is reasonable and good. 10 mean the same molecule or same transaction or same contract, it has been traded 10 times before it is physically delivered to the end user. So this is a churn factor, and we have seen some reports and studies which have been done for the global exchanges like NBP, TTF or Handy and they have provided that churn factor is even beyond 2030 somewhere, especially because there are a lot of financial operators are working on that. So churn factor is important. If the churn factor is low, then the liquidity can't be ensured. So that is, I think, which is important. Number of product offered, it is not only one like daily gas transfer or monthly, it will be number of products are offered. Nominated volume on the hub is high, and the volume trading on the exchange is also high. So then the liquidity can be ensured. These are important. So now I'll take this, what is really physical hub or virtual hub. The common classification for the hub is physical delivery hub or a virtual market hub. Physical hub is basically a centrally located, sufficiently interconnected geographical location in the network where the price is set, natural gas delivered at a specific location. So it's an interconnected of the pipeline web at a place where the price is set. So that is where the physical hub is there. I think the best example is the Henry Hub in North America. So Henry Hub is interconnected to 8 interstate pipeline and 3 intra-state pipelines. So Henry Hub also has a direct connection with the storage facility, which is we discussed that SAARC convention. So these sufficient volumes are being transmitted from various pipeline at a central place and where the price is set. So this is what is Henry Hub. I'll just show you this. You can see this picture where the Henry Hub is there. There is a Sabine pipeline. This is Sabine line, the major pipeline, which is connected to the Henry Hub, and there are various pipelines going to different locations, different states also. And also this is the Jefferson Island is a salt camp. This is the storage facility. So this is the place which is Henry Hub, where it is in Louisiana and where the price is set. So Henry Hub is a physical location and which is centrally located, interconnected located with the various pipeline and also the storage facility. So that is what is the Henry Hub case. If we talk about the virtual hubs, a virtual hub has numerous virtual trading points associated with the entry exit. I think yesterday when Mr. Mathur was explaining about the pipeline systems and various systems involved, the entry exit system is basically applicable in the virtual hub, and entry exit is the market area. So if gas is entered here and take out here, so this particular area is basically a market area, and where and there are multiple entry exit market area in that virtual hub, and which point the same or other network can transport gas to the exit. So hubs in Europe, especially the virtual hub, often overlap the national boundaries. It's not necessary that in UK it is going other countries, and TTF it goes to the other countries, not only in Netherlands. So national balancing point is basically a national grid of UK, which operates an entry-exit system for booking and paying for transmission capacity and for the nomination and scheduling of gas flow. So all shippers on the system have to balance, basically started as a balancing facility, and they had to balance their gas flow at the end of the day, or whenever the delivery final day happen, with gas entering in the system being balanced and with gas exiting system. Hence the name is national balancing point. So to ensure that balancing happens, so that is the reason why this name has been coined in the national grid of UK. And this is a virtual hub which has an entry-exit system, and there is a virtual trading points there. Similarly, the title transfer facility, which is in Netherlands, has transmission system very similar to the UK system, with the entry points at the border and the exit point to the Dutch distribution system. So both are more or less same, follow the same principle in different geography. I'll just show you the map. This is for NBP. These are the this is what we say, that if entry is here and exit is here, so this is a market area where the gas keeps on flowing. There are various locations where the gas is entered at terminal or from other places, goes to different boundaries also, and the gas keeps on flowing in different places. Similarly, this is the Netherlands TTF, and where also the similar kind of situation is there. This is for the TTF. There are few things that also we have noticed, that few words are used when we talk about hubs. So we talks about balancing hub, we talk about financing hub, we also talks about benchmark hub. So these I think we need to understand what is the really meaning and difference of each these words are there. So balancing hub, we discussed, that are used by shipper to balance their portfolio that is near to the maturity and delivery. So this is a balancing hub. And the transmission system operator, TSO, basically physically balance the gas grid regularly. This is one of their important function. In an open market, a balancing hub is needed so that TSO can balance the grid. So when they balance that, it means they do that physically buy and sell and create a price where the TSO operate that physical balance grid. Balancing hub could also be a transit hub which transports substantial volume of gas, but very little trading actually happens. So this is the definition of a hub, balancing hub. On the other side, a financial hub offers the future contract. It means that I just mentioned that it is a hub where to provide your future trade and used by the shipper to optimize their portfolio and manage the long-term risk, hedging and speculative contract, maybe up to 3 years or more. So this is a financial hub. So all trading hubs must be balancing hubs, because otherwise the system cannot operate. But only a few can be a financial hub. Financial hub means where real financial transaction happens, like NBP and TTF have the liquidity and trading volume for future with a long maturity, thus they are the benchmark. So benchmark hub, they are the benchmark hub, they are the financial hub as well. So what is a benchmark? Benchmark basically set the price for the other hubs. There are small hubs in other places in the UK also, but it's like when we talk about NBP or TTF, so they have become the benchmark. If the price is traded on in these benchmark hubs, then other hubs basically take the numbers from these hubs and then decide their prices. So benchmark hub and price marker hubs must have a good liquidity from the spot to several years forward, and should be fully transparent, open, accessible to different participants. So it is a risk management hub and is therefore a financial hub. But not all financial hub are the benchmark hub. So these are various, I think, views have been explained by various authors on this. But I think generally understanding is that, like major hub, like we discussed, Henry Hub, NBP, TTF, or Jibruk, etc. These all hubs are basically financial hub also. They are the benchmark hub also, and they are the balancing hub in any case. Now I think we need to understand whether there is a real LNG hub. These are the all gas hubs where the gas is transported through pipeline and through network, and that is done. Whether the LNG is transported through a cargo load material and from one location to another location, whether really we can develop an LNG hub. So LNG hub development is a complex process, and a lot of work has been done on that, and not free from controversial issues that a lot of countries have worked on that. LNG hub would facilitate, if it happens, the price benchmarking by circumventing the need for a physical trading point in the gas hub. So if that happens, if it is a real hub, if it happens, but LNG is transported, as I mentioned, in the storage format in cargos and does not depend on the pipeline one network. So currently, the various indices are giving the indication of prices of LNG. They are reported by Argus, they are reported by Platts at JKM, they are reported at Sling by Singapore. So they don't have a delivery infrastructure, but they just report the price. Whether they are hub or not, I think they are not. So LNG hub is fraught with limitation because the reason is the largest product size, it has such a big volume, and there is a gap in contracted and delivery of a cargo, and also there are variation in LNG cargo specification. So specification when vary, so the trading becomes a difficult, especially on that side. LNG, lack of interconnectivity, and another thing is the compatibility between the terminals. Because when an LNG cargo is loaded and unloaded, so all the shipping requirements have to be seen whether the particular ship would be able to unload that cargo at that particular point. So compatibility becomes very, very important. So that is also an important part for trading of LNG as a hub, on a hub. Different operating rules of different countries, and there is no regulation from the government. So these are the various concerns have been raised to have an LNG hub. The current LNG price, as mentioned, these are not an hub price, they are indexes, and they are only based on assessments and not on actual trading prices. So if you say JKM is this, it is not necessary that it is an actual price, and they are not actual price. They are only assessments, and based on the information they gather from the market and provide that kind of a information, based on this JKM is derived. And there is no virtually liquidity. I discussed about the churn factor. In these numbers, what JKM is showing, these are the few trades, and they are the physical trade. We really don't know whether how much the derivative trade is happening on that. So liquidity on LNG trading is very, very limited, and there is no functional LNG hub, at least in Asia, because there is no need for other places, but at least for Asia there is no LNG hub. And but those we have seen that lot of discussion and debate, and plus the work has been done where it could be an LNG hub, especially Singapore. Everybody is having a presence in Singapore. Whoever trade in LNG, or who buying LNG or selling LNG, or even traders, everybody is present in Singapore is there. So, and plus Singapore has created infrastructure also for LNG facility, and a lot of work has been done. Similarly, Japan has done a lot of work because they have been importing LNG for quite long, and China has also done that, whether it can be a hub. But still, no final decision and no final operability of those hubs have happened. Though there is a debate that whether Singapore or Japan could be a leading candidate, but Singapore could be a regional benchmark for the LNG hub. But also it has a problem because the volume traded in Singapore, within Singapore, is very less requirement, and there is a slow development of future market and the low volume of trading. So we are still, I think, far away that we can have a real LNG hub in the near future. So to sum up few things of a efficient gas hub, I'll just recap this. First important is the price deregulation and unbundling services that we discussed. So the government deregulated the price, regulators separated the commodity and sale functions from transportation and other services, and there are a number of buyers and sellers will increase if that happens. Third party access of the infrastructure, which is generally very normal. We use the per TPA. The government mandate that open access and open for hub network to the buyer and seller. Important is bilateral trading. Buyer and seller contract with each other for their own terms over the TPA facility. The number of parties could be there. Price transparency. The price reporting entity means the price information should publish timely information, immediate information to the public for the volumes being traded, and also for the bilateral trading which is done now through exchange. So there are standardized contract. So because if we have a standard contract, a standard terms and condition, then it will be easier for trade in the market. So this is also important. OTC trade we discussed. The price indexation is feasible if we have a trade and all this other liquidity and other. So these are the important element for an efficient market hub. But we cannot say that if you do not have these all terms, you cannot start having a hub. Like in UK, when it was really become an efficient market, it took years and years to reach to that level. Similarly, I think for our region or for our countries, I think we have to start working, going towards that level, it may take time. It may need a lot of changes in the regulation. It may change. It may need the change of the mindset, and maybe a certain infrastructure need to be developed to reach to this level of efficient marketing. So I'll just give you a little information about the Indian experience. India has recently had an India Gas Exchange. The regulator, that is PNGRB, has framed the regulations for gas exchange operation and also given an approval for India Gas Exchange to operate and facilitate the trade for gas. This India Gas Exchange is basically a subsidiary of India Energy Exchange. India Energy Exchange basically is an exchange platform for trading of power, and they have been operating over decades, more than that time in India, and quite efficient to that. They have created this separate organization, independent organization, and having a shareholding not only from IEX, but the major shareholding has also gone to National Stock Exchange, to gas companies who are in the business. But they have been, there is a mandate that any gas trader or gas buyer and seller, they can't have more than 5% in the trade, in the exchange, because to keep an arm's length relationship and no day-to-day management should not be in their hand. So not more than 5%. So in this company, 5% shareholding have been taken by GAIL and ONGC, which is an upstream company. 5% has been taken by Adani Total, which is a CGD company, and 5% have been taken by there is another company, I think Torrent Gas. So those companies have taken the shareholdings. So it's now a fully functional exchange. The objective of the exchange is to promote short-term liquidity in the market and support small consumer to mid-level. So this particular exchange is a physical gas trading. There is no derivative, because currently the function of derivation and the physical trade is with the two regulators. So it has not gone to the SEBI, which is the Security Exchange Board of India. So it is only the PNGRB has allowed the physical trade so far, and it start operating in June 2020, and currently have multiple hubs. There are 3 hubs where the major volumes are flowing, basically on the western side and one on the eastern side. So government has also granted recently a freedom to trade small quantity of gas, which is domestic gas. Otherwise, domestic gas is totally controlled by the government. So it is some free market gas, which government has earlier allowed that should be through auction. Now some quantity, I think 10% of that, they can trade through exchange. So it is basically giving flip to exchange for more and more liquidity. And currently RLNG, as well as a small amount of domestic gas, is being traded, and daily volumes are increasing, though very small, but it's growing. So I'll just give you what are the different kind of contracts are being handled by the exchange or being traded. A day-ahead contract, day-ahead means the contract available for trading for the next day delivery. So if you do a trade today, tomorrow the gas would be delivered to you. Daily contracts will be the 1-day delivery period, and where the trade up to 9 days delivery contract, and it is basically T+2. So if today you have done a trade, the delivery would happen so 2 days after that. Weekly contract, which is for 7 days, Monday to Sunday. So this is a 7-day delivery contract and weekly contract. Another is the weekday contract. Weekday means 5 days in a week. That is basically Saturday and Sunday are excluded. So these products are also available. Fortnight contract is 15 days or first 15 days and next balance period. It could be 16 days or it could be 13 days, depends on the month. So it is a fortnight contract and also monthly contract. So these are the various contracts are offered on the exchange, and they are being used. Currently, as I mentioned, the IGX provides contract at hubs, basically at Dahej, which is and Dahej Hazira. Dahej Hazira is both are interconnected, and Hazira is basically a point where major domestic gas flows, as well as there is an LNG terminal. Dahej, in any case, we have LNG terminal, and also the KG basin. This is the eastern side, where the Kakinada is the hub for that has been provided for the time being, and they have also proposal to create more hubs going forward. So another question comes in our mind, whether the SAARC member nations may have a common gas hub. I think this is the question in mind. or whether the IGX like situation, an organization can serve as a South Asian hub. But we feel a state constraint that pipeline connectivity is a major issue because currently we are not connected to the pipeline, though there are various proposals. And then we need to have a common regulator who regulate this business. So not really sure whether it is feasible immediately and when it will happen, but the minimum requirement for an hub or an exchange, I think, need to be there before we really start talking about inter-regional trade. Till the pipeline connectivity happens, I think the gas consuming nations in SAARC region may start developing their own physical hub like it has been done in India, at least to start with. So that will help, I think, in future to create a market in future. The detail of this inter-regional trade and also the pipeline, inter-regional pipeline, I think is going to be discussed in coming session. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll stop here and we'll be happy to take any question from the audience. Thank you very much.
So you can discuss with each other. Meanwhile, we will collecting the question. Thanks.
Sorry, I couldn't get it. Hello.
Yes, sir.
I couldn't get you. Anything?
Sir, everything is fine. We will just collecting the question and we will ask you shortly. If you have some discussion, so you may continue there.
Okay. Sure. I think I'll request Dr. Banyan, because he is having a lot of knowledge and understanding. He can give some more insight to this hub.
Yeah, thank you, Gagsab. I think your presentation was pretty exhaustive and covered all aspects of exchange. This is definitely a new experiment in India, and the operation of a gas exchange also comes under the purview of the regulator. So the good part is that the regulator has gone into the various aspects of this functioning of this exchange and has found that it qualifies and meets the requirement of transparency in the gas trades, and also the required arm's-length relationship between the operator, what we call it, the contract operator, and the transport system operator, the two operators there. And the basic good principles have been adopted. So I think the regulatory board has given approval for the functioning of exchange, which I think is a very welcome sign here, that some of the best practices have been approved. Also, if you see the trade that is happening it is now several months that the exchange is in operation, and we see a rising trend of the volumes that have been traded. And the third thing is that how does the pricing look like, which is very important for any hub or an exchange there. So the pricing looks to be also very close to what are the expectation and affordability right now, of course. And we have seen that the pricing also has been now picked up by the various global benchmarks, and they have started showing West India this hub pricing, and also giving the reference of the Indian exchange. So I think it augurs well for the functioning of the exchange, and they are in the process of really expanding their activities and taking some of the best practices from the global exchanges. And I see that they have all the credentials to grow in time. And maybe, as you talked about the derivatives and other futures, I think as the volumes grow in there, and in this SAARC region, we see that India is slowly moving to meet all the requirements of a mature gas. It's a matter of time, what I feel, and India would definitely, in terms of volume, they are growing appreciable. We also have large, huge gas LNG imports also there. We have a very growing even the consumer base, number of players, financial institutions, all those what are required for a transparent operations and as elements of a good exchange. They are going to be there, slowly developing. So I think in coming time, I do feel that this would definitely become a kind of a benchmark. They are increasing their um, hubs as well, closer to the other terminals that are coming up. The proposal for coming to Indore on the east coast as well, slowly on this. So I think with the increase this thing, what perhaps is required to my mind to make it really effective would be to connecting these regional gas markets with some pipeline connectivity. I think that's one thing which we feel if it comes in next 1 or 2 years time, we'll see a tremendous growth and perhaps activities of this exchange.
Thank you very much.
Just to add on, sir, I will just give you illustration of what the trading which has happened yesterday in the exchange. And for the monthly contract, the total buy was 3,10,000 million BTUs. Total sell call was 3,70,650 MMBTUs, and the final volume traded was 3,10,000 million BTUs for the monthly contract, which is roughly 82.24 lakh SCM. And the price that they discovered was Indian rupees 1800 per million BTU. And the delivery hub was Dahej. And delivery is from 1st December to 31st of December. Just to give an example. And there were trades, as Mr. Garg put it, daily contracts. There were weekly contracts, and the monthly one I've just told you. So while the volume for daily was slightly less and weekly was slightly more, but monthly contracts are the ones which are in vogue, and a lot of people, buyers and sellers, are interacting and trying to cover, square up the trades. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajiv sir. So I think we'll just quickly take 1-2 questions. Question is from Mohammad Junaid Iqbal from Ogra. How big is a big market size? What do you mean by a big market size?
Big market size is where actually there is no definition. Generally, it says the big market, sufficient market, where the buyers and traders are many and the volumes can trade. It is not a small segment, small portion of the market. If you have a small activity, big market, a bigger market could be anything. If we really talk about Europe is total market. But at least like in India, we are not having a big market totally connected yet. So it is not a big market. It is still western northern region. So, and basically when it is interconnected with the pipeline and having a good volume is being traded, so it's become a big. There is no definition of big market.
Actually speaking, the right terminology would be perhaps a mature market, because in mature the size is also part of one thing. There are markets which are fairly okay size but are not matured, because you need to really come to all good practices put in practice and all aspects being really practiced there. I think it would be appropriate to say that we are moving towards a mature market.
Okay, so we have a question from Mohammad Junaid Iqbal from Ogra. If churn outs are higher, what will be the effect on the end consumer's price?
I think the end consumer price could be anything. Ultimately, the purpose of the liquidity is more in the market. If the liquidity is there, the consumer is going to be benefited with more and more liquidity. And also the seller would also be benefited with the more and more liquidity. It means trade would happen more. So ultimately, it will help the trade. So the price would be determined with demand and supply in any case. But helping the liquidity is important. Whenever you wanted to buy, you will get the volume. Whenever you wanted to sell, you can sell the volume. So this is what happens if you have a better channel.
I think
more the liquidity.
You can add more here, because the buyer also would have some comfort that the pricing is also okay because it is based on several trades happening on the same level.
Absolutely.
So I think definitely a comfort of a reasonable price is there to the buyer.
So more the liquidity, more the real price realization. All the abnormal prices would get subsumed in the number of trades which are happening, and the real price discovery will actually happen the more the churning happens.
Absolutely.
Rightly said.
Above all, you have access to volumes, which otherwise you are not having in a long-term contract. Now, suddenly you need more volumes. The buyer needs more volumes, and he gets those volumes. Maybe he pays a little more price, but at least he gets those volumes. So that is something is available off the shelf, and you can just pick it, maybe at a regulated price discovered by the exchange.
I think the terminology they use at what Rajiv said rightly is the churning rate. Churning rate is something, a kind of a ratio between the volumes that are available and the volumes actually traded. So as the churning improves, rates get slowly optimized. And that's what is being experienced here.
So churning comes with basically once you have more of derivative trades going on, then the churning also starts. And all these risk management tools, they come into play. That is what we see on NYMEX and other exchanges, kind of churning they have.
Okay.
The question here is, whether this first exchange that has come in India, whether it could really grow and has the potential to grow at a regional and operate at a regional level, actually. So I think that is a thing that we need to see, and whether it would really bring in advantages for more consumers in the regional area.
Yeah. So I have one small presentation on intra-regional cooperation coming up, and one of the objectives of bringing up that topic was just to explore how we can really, take these forwards and help exchanges develop in the countries and then merge them. So that will come up in the presentation to be followed.
Sir, we'll take just last question from Arif Ogra. What's the possibility of SAARC member countries jointly pursuing in securing sustainable gas supplies for its members?
I think this is important. If we have a club or exporter, and if we have the volumes are increasing for the region, if we join together, at least join together to discuss and appreciate the problem, and starts showing a brave face together, definitely there is an advantage to the market. Whether you buy independent together, that is another issue. But I think at least joining together, and that is.
So may I just add that we would be bringing up this in this next session, and you have to move step by step. You have to have some cross-border trade, a good cross-border trade. Once that matures, and you have good systems, you have transparency, you have no disputes in that, then you gradually graduate in that level where you can strategically, you can come together and strategically, leverage your bargaining power and have a better price. Mathurji, you have to say something.
No, that's fine. I think we will discuss that subsequently.
Okay, so
I wanted to say we have already tried that with some countries in the past. We tried making a buyers club with Japan, Korea, and some other countries who were big importers. We had a couple of meetings also and tried to, bring in a common consensus as to how to approach the sellers. But what has happened over a period of time is some of the sellers have also become buyers and some of the buyers have also become sellers. So it has become a fungible this thing, and the distinction between buyers and sellers is, gradually just fading away. So, and then trading and all which is happening, is another dimension to the whole story. But anyway, we can maybe pursue it further.
Sure. Yeah.
So now, thank you very much, Mr. Garg, for your presentation and the subsequent replies to those queries and questions by the participants. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we would quickly move on to one of the previous leftover business. We had a small section which was leftover because of shortage of time on the day two. The topic was on the cross-border pipelines and the impact on LNG trade. And we would now request Mr. Rajiv Mathur to continue with that section in next 10 to 15 minutes time. So, Mr. Rajiv Mathur.
Sure.
So, just for the information of the participants, you can access the presentation and the content of this training on our official website. Plus, if you have any query or any clarification or any questions you want to ask to the experts, you can surely ask in this section and in the session which will be on the wrap up open house for participants with trainers and lead trainers from 11:45 to 12:15 Pakistan Standard Time today. So you can also ask the participants any questions. So over to sir.
Is my presentation visible?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
it's visible, sir. इसको full screen कर लीजिए.
I will go to that section which we have not covered. Oh, sorry.
No issue, sir.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we had limited time last time, and therefore we could not cover cross-border or transnational pipelines and their impact on LNG markets, and what impact it has on liquidity and trade. So I thought today we might have an opportunity and some time. So I'll try and wrap it up in maybe 10-15 minutes, but I'll be happy to take more questions as we go along. So let's talk about cross-border natural gas pipelines and see how and where they are. And I'll try and give some illustrations of a couple of these pipelines. So as we all know, transnational pipelines, they try and create long-term economic interest between nations, especially to meet their energy requirements. So some nation has got, natural gas reserves and resources. The other nations need that kind of form of energy. And a transnational pipeline is a very good way of, not only utilizing the resource which is available in a country, in another country which is looking for that kind of energy, it also creates long-term economic and other relations and bonding between the nations. The only point that I want to make here is that whilst in LNG business you have lots of suppliers, we saw there are about 20 suppliers in 40 now countries which are importing, and a ship could actually go from any country to any country. In transnational pipelines, they are point to point, which means that a resource is defined and market is defined in another nation, and then the pipeline designing, construction, operation, etc., all done. Capacities are decided, and with long-term market conditions in view, and that decides as to how much form of energy in terms of natural gas will flow from wherever it is produced to wherever it is required to be utilized. So to that extent, these transnational pipelines create rigidity into the system and assurance also, on the other hand, that the volumes will be produced somewhere, it will be transported through the pipeline and finally delivered to wherever it is supposed to be delivered. As opposed to that, in a pipeline, we define the capacity, we define the supply volumes and how the ramp up is going to happen, and we also define the term. Generally, such pipelines are laid and constructed for long-term, supplies. So 15 years is also a too short a period for these kind of transnational pipeline contracts. Generally, they are 25, 30 years kind of a thing, and with evergreen renewal because pipelines last for 40, 50 years. In fact, some of the pipelines get upgraded also as the energy demands and requirements grow, and the destinations are also defined. At times, there is more than one destination because the pipelines cross through several nations, and each one has its own requirement. So to that extent, the flexibility gets limited. But conversely, if you see, and what we are experiencing now in LNG, that while liquidity is a good thing, it has brought in spot contracts, it has brought in short-term contracts, but it has also brought in vagaries of the reliability of delivery and redelivery not being so assured as through a transnational pipeline. So while trading opportunities and arbitrage may arise in terms of pricing and opportunities in some other places to buy or sell gas, in transnational pipelines, come what may, the gas will have to flow from wherever it is produced, and it will have to be delivered wherever it is required to be delivered. So to that extent, reliability and assurance and availability of energy is reasonably guaranteed in transnational pipelines. The other point is that, while we have experienced over long periods of time, the energy requirements are only growing across the world. Whether it is developed nations, whether it's developing nations, or any other country which is coming up, they all need more and more energy. And the fallacy that the demand may not be there or the requirements may go away are just not the case. At least we have not experienced that in South Asia or Southeast Asia, even other parts of the world, even in Europe and other places. So what is happening is the LNG projects, they are not poaching on the markets of transnational pipelines. So what I mean to say is they are complementary to each other. In fact, having LNG import projects or LNG terminals only provides some kind of flexibility to energy requirements, which may either vary seasonally or because of some other vagaries, situations like COVID or etc., anything else. You could still balance your demand, supply, and the availability of product. So they are complementary to each other and very helpful in meeting the energy needs of various nations. Coming quickly to what is good, and in terms of whether one should go in for a LNG project or one should go in for a pipeline project, the experience in the past has been that pipeline is had been in the past a more efficient mode of transporting, and thereby the cost of transportation of natural gas through a pipeline was lower over distances. Here is a graph which shows that as you go further, or as the market is further away from where the gas or LNG is produced, it is better to have LNG as the option. And if it is closer, then decidedly transportation through pipeline is a better methodology. Now, this is a slightly old graph, but what it suggests is that LNG transportation, generally shipping costs between say $1 to $2 kind of a band, and whereas pipelines at some locations they may be as low as 50-60 cents, going up to $1-1.5. So depending on what the transportation cost with a reasonable rate of return is through a pipeline mode, one could weigh it against, whether LNG is going to cost you more or less, and then accordingly take a call on whether to set up a LNG facility or go in for a transnational pipeline. My own take, as I said, is that, whichever pipeline has come in, they are generally utilized fully over a longer period of time. And in fact, more and more energy requirements are there. Therefore, then LNG only supplements that. And there is no kind of poaching or gobbling up of demand by LNG and as vis-a-vis the pipelines. Quickly coming to share of pipelines and LNG in the international trade. This is a graph of the last 10 years or so, up to 2018-19, and it suggests that while pipeline trade has been there in the past for a very long time, the share of LNG in the entire international trade is only growing. And sooner or later, the kind of LNG terminals that are coming up, the liquefaction facilities which are coming up, LNG trade is continuing to grow. And we saw how over 450 million tons of LNG, etc., is getting traded, and it is only growing. While pipelines are coming up, but and today they have a substantial share of international trade. Sooner or later, LNG is going to catch up with the international pipeline trade. And of course, domestic trade through pipelines is the largest chunk. About 2/3 of the trade or marketing of gas is being done through pipelines within the boundaries of various nations where the gas is found. And then about maybe 20% or so is international trade, and the rest is LNG trade. But the international trade through LNG is only growing. Coming quickly to some of the new transnational pipelines which have come up, there are pipelines which have come up in Europe, and recently some pipelines have come up, connecting China. Why I'm focusing on Europe and China is that, traditionally Europe has been the largest market for piped natural transnational gas, gas being supplied through long distance transnational pipelines. And China is the latest entrant where piped gas is now being supplied in a big way. Some of the new projects which have come up recently, Nord Stream 1, it is the longest subsea twin. There are two pipelines of 48 inch which are connecting the Russian gas fields with the mainland Europe. It has the beauty of these pipelines is that they can actually transport and deliver huge volumes, as opposed to a LNG ship or maybe a LNG terminal which can do 2.5 to 5 million tons per annum, and then you have to either modularly increase the capacity of those terminals or set up new terminals. In case of a pipeline, for example, the 48-inch Nord Stream 1, there are two pipelines, as I said. They can actually do about 150 million cubic meters per day, which is roughly 40 million tons of LNG equivalent. So that's one pipeline, and it can actually deliver in bulk across nations. If you look at Nord Stream 2, which is again a 48-inch twin pipeline, the targeted completion of this pipeline was the middle of 2020. We have lately seen, that while this pipeline has been completed, but it has not been commissioned as yet, and there are issues and beyond the normal, should I say, commercial arrangements that are coming in the way of commissioning of these pipelines. Again, this pipeline would be able to transport and deliver about 30 to 40 million tons equivalent of LNG once it's operational. There are two other pipelines which have recently come up. One is called TANAP. Again, it is about 1800 kilometers pipeline from Azerbaijan to Turkey and Europe. And this was commissioned end of 2019. Again, throughput is about 44 million cubic meters of gas per day for Europe and for Turkey and other places. Later on, using the resources of Central Asian nations like Turkmenistan, the capacity would rise to 60 billion cubic meters, and this will help, supplies to Turkey, Greece, Albania, Italy. Also, although incidentally, Turkey has got huge fines recently, and how much they will need going forward from these kind of pipelines is another thing. But then these would be very helpful for the European nations going forward. Another pipeline is Turk Stream pipeline, 930 kilometers, two pipelines of 32-inch. Again, these are supplying gas from Russia, going to Turkey, Bulgaria, Eastern Europe, essentially. Again, huge volumes, 10 to 20 million tons LNG equivalent kind of a thing. Gas flows from Russia as well as, neighboring countries into Eastern Europe. Coming quickly to the Chinese side, recently a new pipeline has got commissioned from Russia, Siberia to be precise, and connecting to the Chinese market from the northern side. Now the red orange line is the one within Russia. This goes up to the Chinese border, and from there is this turquoise pipeline is the one which is going to Beijing and Shanghai. Now this pipeline, has just been commissioned beginning of this year, and there's about 10 billion cubic meters of gas which is already flowing into this pipeline. By the year 2024, about 38 to 40 billion cubic meters of gas, that is 4 times of what is flowing today, is likely to flow through this pipeline. So while China is going to be one of the largest markets and growing markets for natural gas, about 30 million tons or thereabouts equivalent of LNG market is going to be fed through these pipelines alone going forward. And a 30-year contract has been signed by China. The monetary term or the volume of that contract is 400 billion US dollars equivalent. That's the kind of contract which CNPC has signed with Gazprom. So this is one example of transnational pipelines which has been successful and supplying gas to a growing market. We have already talked of TANAP, we have talked of Turk Stream, and we have talked of Nord Stream 2. So this is just an illustration of these pipelines and how from Russia and from Central Asia, these pipelines will be able to supply gas to Eastern Europe and connecting to pipelines which then can feed markets in Western Europe. Now, this is an interesting map which has only come in, a couple of days ago. It sums up the entire market in the European this thing, and it shows you how LNG, piped gas, and gas coming in from Russia through Brotherhood and other pipelines, and also Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2 is going to feed all these markets. It also gives you the size of each of these markets. It also shows you how piped gas is coming in from Algeria and Libya into Italy as well as Spain and Portugal and other places going through Gibraltar. And it also talks about how US LNG from Nigeria, Trinidad, Tobago, etc., and from other side Qatar, etc., is balancing the entire gas requirement of Europe. And then you also see from north LNG and piped gas coming from North Sea, as well as some LNG, about 6 million tons of LNG coming from Snowwait and other projects within Europe, and also about 110 billion cubic meters kind of a number flowing into UK, Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, and other places. So that sums up the entire, how international trade and international, pipelines, transnational pipelines have been able to meet the domestic requirements of various nations and creating a kind of a long-term bonding between nations. Of course, there are issues. If you see on the right side, countries like Ukraine, which were used as transit countries by Russia, since they are having some issues, this Nord Stream 1 and 2 are bypassing these transit nations which are charging transit charges. And at times when the cold winter is high, then there has been a tendency in the past to retain some volumes which are required to flow to, for example, Poland, Germany, etc., etc. And then so that's how you see Nord Stream 1 and now Nord Stream 2 coming up. But then there are more than commercial interests which are involved at times, and that determine, how much gas would flow from the producing nations onto the receiving nation, how much, what will be the tariff, what will be the pricing, etc., etc. So those are also things which, and then at the end of the day, how much storage, is there for seasonal variations like winter and all that. So, but all told, transnational pipelines are a very good way of, supplementing or meeting the energy requirements of various nations, not one, but many. They also, the LNG is actually complementing the transnational pipelines, and together they are able to meet the energy demands, which are growing across the world. I think I will stop here, and we'll be happy to. Okay, before I do that, or Swami Sahab, are you going to take this slide in your this thing, or should I talk about this regional accessibility?
Sir, ये complete कर दीजिए, then we'll talk about intra-regional.
Okay.
We'll discuss there.
Okay. So once we have witnessed that, even nations who don't see, on policy matters, who countries may not be having full alignment, but even those countries, energy requirements are either being met through these kind of pipelines, or which are used as transit countries for meeting the requirements of other countries. In similar manner, in Asian countries also, transnational pipelines could be one mode of, meeting the demands which are only growing in South Asia. And we have huge reserves in some of the neighboring countries. South Asia has been very fortunate that in Middle East, huge reserves are there, in Qatar, in Iran, even in Central Asia, countries like Turkmenistan, etc. They have huge reserves. And while the demand, of course, is rising in countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc., it would be very opportune and a good idea to, further the interest of both the countries which have the resources and the countries which need these kind of volumes through pipelines which are set up and which can deliver gas from the supply sources to the demand centers in these countries. And as we know that South Asia is one of the most promising areas as far as requirement of natural gas, the availability of downstream infrastructure, and the end customers are concerned. And so pipelines like, IPI for that matter, or for that matter, TAPI pipeline, which are not very long, actually about 1600 kilometers thereabouts, which can feed the requirement of several nations. And in turn, for example, it could be connected to the grids within Pakistan, within India, and then interconnectivity into Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, etc., can also easily happen with the kind of grid which is getting created in India. So, and these pipelines, as I said, can carry huge volumes, and they can be equivalent to maybe 5 or 6 LNG terminals, which otherwise would require to be set up at different locations. And once you connect that to the grid, the gas can easily flow from any point to any point, and actually the molecule doesn't flow; it is then swapped, and delivery of another molecule happens wherever the demand is. So all in all, regional pipelines like these, meet the demand requirements of various nations. They help in long-term energy needs to be met, and as we all saw, the transmission charges, etc., are quite competitive with the new cost of construction, etc., going down, and so therefore at the delivery point, burner tip, they can actually be quite competitive with the LNG that one gets from international sources. And they, as we discussed in the last section on hubs, now these kind of pipelines could actually be very helpful in creating physical hubs, in the regional context. And because it requires pipeline connectivity, it requires flow of gas, it requires a lot of demand centers to be accessible to the gas which is coming in. And the physical hub that we are talking about could actually get created, and inter-regional trade could also happen through these kind of pipelines. So I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Rajiv Sir, for an excellent presentation. I would ask the participants to pose any questions to Rajiv Sir and other experts. In the meanwhile, Rajiv Sir, I just had one query. I'm not a big expert on this one, but for example, if you have been talking about importing gas from those Central Asian markets to the South Asian market, and clearly there are apparently two modes of transferring those gas reserves, gas supplies. One is the pipeline, and the other one is through these LNG FSRUs. So could you just give us some kind of number? I mean, if how much volume of gas it would be more feasible to transfer it from pipelines comparable to the LNG cargoes? I mean, could you give some kind of a specific number, or would it be very difficult, because obviously it would depend on from location to location and project to project basis?
So strictly comparing the shipping charges, pipelines would be within $1 or $1.50 transmission charges from wherever the gas is available. Now, whatever is the basic price of gas, add on to that the transmission charges, and there is something called a transit fee also, which is applicable in these cases if you transit a country, if the pipeline is transiting a country. So all that add on, my belief is that it will still prove to be much cheaper than at least the kind of spot prices or the strip prices which are prevailing in the market today. And depending on how one is able to negotiate, effectiveness of piped gas has been proven, even in Europe and other nations. But then this is just a generalization. Specific instances will have to be evaluated specifically, and then the actual number will determine whether long-term LNG import is beneficial at the delivery point or through piped gas, in specific cases.
I would
just to add on this, these pipeline connectivities were not seen just as a pipeline. I think there was a broader approach in this, much wider approach, and was a proposal to really convert them into industrial corridors, so that it's not just the pipeline, it could be power, it could be other trade that would happen in this country. So this was seen as a proposal which would really foster much closer cooperation among these countries, and a lot of industrial activities could really develop. So not just the pipeline, it was supported. This pipeline project was supported to be really expanded to industrial corridor. One of the, if I correctly remember, the in terms of volumes, I think it was about Rajiv, if you can correct me on that.
90 million cubic meters, sir.
How much?
90 million cubic meters to begin with, sir, this Tapi pipeline.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Which is around 20-25 million tons of LNG equivalent, which is very sizable number, and then it could be upgraded.
Good size.
Yeah.
Good size.
Okay, just wanted to add to the question Hasan Saab has raised. I think if ballpark number we see, the liquefaction cost is close to $3 per MMBTU, and the pipeline cost is say $1 if we really transfer from one place to another. So $4. The $4 is the cost, and plus shipping in any case. So these costs are additional costs. Gas is a gas. So if we have a pipeline, and pipeline Mr. Mathur is telling say $1, $1.50 per transit fee, if it is within that range, definitely pipeline, if connected, is a good option.
Yes, very rightly said. I just asked this question because last year we had conducted a study on the feasibility of a oil pipeline from Bangladesh to India, whereby the oil being imported by Bangladesh would, instead of going through ships or the trucks, would be transported through a pipeline, and that we had basically prepared a model, Excel model based in which all calculations were made, and then it was found out that basically a pipeline would be more feasible to transport the oil. So just ask this question in connection to that aspect. So thank you very much for your replies. I'll see it out if we have another question. We have a question from Shanita Safwat. And how energy mix decision may have impact on having gas hub in the Asian or SAARC countries?
I could not understand the question, please.
What exactly?
I think she's referring to the national energy mix of each country. How energy mix decision may have impact on having gas hub in the Asian countries. Maybe she's trying to connect these things.
So I guess each country has to decide how much of the energy mix gas would form part of, and based on whatever are the projections of gas requirements going forward in next 5, 10, 15 years will determine how much more gas will be required by that nation. And then if you collectively look at what each of these nations' policy is and how much additional gas volumes would be required, that will determine the kind of volumes that would be available for being exchanged, across these nations and utilized in those countries. And that may form the basis of the volume which can, some of which will get traded through those hubs. I guess theoretically that may be the answer. So the larger the volumes, the larger the chances of hub being a success.
Okay. So now I think we are over with the questions for this part. Participants obviously can ask questions till the time we wrap up the next session. So we would quickly move on to the next section. Thank you very much, Mr. Rajiv, for your presentation and for the replying to these questions by the experts. So we move on to the last presentation of today's training event. The presentation title is Potential of Intra-Regional Trade, and contents include benefits of intra-regional trade, key factors, enablers for trade, key trade modes, swaps, sales, purchase amongst nations, and potential of trade among the SAARC member state. The presentation would be delivered by Mr. Swami. So over to Swami sir for the presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Till the time Swami Saab could connect his presentation, we would just ask another question we have received from Bangladesh, Muhammad Shah Alam. What is the status of Tapi pipeline, when it would be in operation, and would you please give an idea about the costing of subsea gas pipeline? Long questions.
We are not privy to, what officially is happening, but what we read in the press is that Tapi pipeline, already there is a Tapi company which has been formed. It is operating out of UAE or Dubai, if I'm not wrong. The feasibility studies have been done. The contracts, commercial contracts generally are in place. And they were looking at funding, which I think ADB and some other multilateral agencies have supported the project, and therefore that is my public knowledge on this. Beyond that, I think they need to implement the project, and I am told that the leg between Turkmenistan and Afghanistan is already under implementation. The 110 kilometers of pipeline from Galkanish field to the Afghan border, I am told, is already constructed. And what is happening within Afghanistan, I am not privy to that. So that's the status I know of as of now.
Okay. So let's move on to the second part, which is, could you give an idea about the costing of a subsea gas pipeline?
Obviously, a subsea pipeline will cost you more because it has to be laid on the floor of the or the bed of the sea. We did one exercise from Oman to India, and we found that you have equally big mountains on the seabed as you see in the Himalayas, and there is something called the Indus Swatch which one had to cross, and the elevation within that seabed was maybe 1,000 meters to 2,000 meters at points. So it's not easy to lay subsea pipelines. Then their operation and maintenance, compression facilities have to be either at shore, or if you have floating compression facilities, that cost you huge money. So all told, all said and done, the transmission charges will not be $1.5 that I'm talking about. It may be double or more. So, but then there are subsea pipelines which have been laid, even up to the depth of the 3,000 meters or beyond that. Yeah.
Just to add on that, Mr. Alfonso, we did some work and feasibility study for a shorter stretch of subsea pipeline and on-surface pipeline comparison for about I think it was about 7-8 kilometers of distance. Thumb rule would be, of course, it depends upon what kind of environment is there, subsea, what kind of soil structure is there, texture and physical stability, and all those parameters come in heavily on that to really assess. But then a thumb rule would be around 2.5 times more than a on-land pipeline.
Yes. So shortly, could you just mention the those projects which have already been laid? Case of the subsea pipelines, you mentioned some projects have been installed.
Well, we have in the offshore, western offshore of India, all those pipelines are subsea pipeline there actually, starting from small diameter to 48 inches crude oil and pipelines. I am not really privy on what kind of pricing or ballpark figures on that. They're difficult. They have been implemented, and the complexities are much more on that. But we did for for an FSRU, which is being in the offshore area around 5 to 8 kilometers away from the shore. For that, I can share is about ballpark figure kind of a 2.5 times more than the pipeline on this thing. A 28 to 30 inch pipeline I'm talking about.
Just to add on, sir, we did one study from Kochi terminal to Kayamkulam, 110
Yeah,
kilometers,
exactly.
and the costing was 2 or 2.5 times, as you rightly said,
It was
and
coming
therefore
around
they,
2 times.
yeah.
That was about almost 10 years back we did that.
So thank you very much. So without further delay, Swami Saab, over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Asanji. Thank you so much, all the participants, for your patient hearing. And we finally come to the last session, and that is we have potential for intra-regional cooperation and trade amongst the SAARC member countries. But before I begin my presentation, I would just like to recall some of the key points which would be pertinent for this session, and that we have talked about the advancement of technology in the supply chain management of the LNG, and we have decent technology solutions to make it very feasible for distribution of LNG in far-flung places at very economic, very competitive prices. And there was an excellent database study which was shown yesterday by Dr. Nawaz for its cost as well as for the IRRs. And even for long distances, the IRRs were quite impressive. The next, what I want to recall for all my esteemed participants is that in the second session, we had looked at some of the projections of demand in the SAARC member states. What kind of demand can emerge for gas? And when we did that, we also looked at what can be the landed price of LNG when supplied to countries which do not have the gas-based infrastructure like Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Nepal, and Maldives. So now with this background, uh, this is the potential. So we have three very pertinent questions. First is, can trade in natural gas occur when all the SAARC member nations are already dependent on imports of natural gas? If yes, then what can be the options? And if yes, then what is the potential? And then what can be the long-term gains, or what can be the long-term benefits? So this is the outline. We'll quickly go into what will be the key drivers for this trade and what can be the trade options like sale purchase, swaps, tolling options, and then what can be short to mid-term plays in trade, and then the long-term objectives, how we SAARC member nations can collaborate, can take this cooperation forward to increase the trade, and finally, can we look at establishing a South Asian gas hubs or maybe a South Asian gas exchange, and of course, establish a sound infrastructure for cross-border trade. Now, the key drivers for intra-regional, what would drive the intra-regional trade is first is the demand. We have already discussed that at length. The next is the fluctuations in supplies and demands. Now you see, supplies can always, gas supplies I'm talking about, they can always be impacted due to problems in the upstream. Like you may have geological surprises in the gas fields, which suddenly disrupt or lead to decline in the volumes. You may have to take maintenance, scheduled maintenance of the platforms, or maybe sometimes there are long breakdowns, and then sometimes you have the workovers going on in the wells, which again your supplies get disrupted. So supplies can be impacted, and then the pipe. And then here, when we talk of maintenance, we can also talk about the LNG terminals, well, LNG terminals as well as the gas platforms. Now the pipelines do require some maintenance and some pigging and all that. They can also affect the supplies. And then the demand. Now the demand can be volatile. It can be impacted by the business sentiments or the business cycles, what we talk of. So, or maybe it is sometimes seasonal. It may just suddenly emerge. And it depends upon a lot of other economic factors like substitutes and all those things. So another part about demand is that it can happen that demand emerges suddenly in one region and subsides in the other part of the region. So that makes a very good fit. In one section of this region, you have sudden growth of demand, and in the other section of the region, you have the demand has got slightly suppressed because of any factor. So you have an ideal position for which can help you in trade. Uh, the next key driver is the benefits of shared infrastructure and business practices. Now, first I'll talk about the shared infrastructure, the natural gas business, and establishing infrastructure for natural gas is a very, very capital intensive effort. It takes substantial investments and time to build gas, and not only investments, you need a lot of time. So if you start planning today, by the time you have the infrastructure in place, it is several years, 5 years, 7 years, and like things like that. Then sharing infrastructure can bring down the overall capital investments and save time. So the two very important parts. If you share the infrastructure with your neighboring countries, then that can help to bring down the overall capital investments, because the shared infrastructure can be used in a more optimized manner. And above all, you can save time to access your gas molecules. And of course, the opportunities for stakeholders. Now, there are investors in infrastructure who will, this business will provide them returns, and they will definitely be interested. So there are the opportunities. There are some stakeholders who look for these opportunities, who want to invest, who are already there in the business. Then the traders. Now, traders, they are there, and in exchange of their profit, a very important takeaway is that they help in the growth of the sector. So that is what the gas traders can do. They can bring the suppliers and the consumers. They can help to bring them together and resolve the issue, so that finally they are interested in volumes, and they are interested in a small profit that they can make out of the volumes. Governments would be interested, because finally, if you have access to whatever the cheap energy, it is the social, you straight away it helps in the economic growth for this energy deficient subcontinent. So these are the three drivers, which can drive the intra-regional trade. And then what are the trade options? And just before I talk about the options, I want to make a small statement. Just did some calculations, and I found that savings of $1 per MMBTU in trade of 1 MMSCMD can actually benefit someone by $15 million per year. Now, these are the kind of numbers. Just if you have a benefit of say about $3 and you trade 2 MMSCMD, so you get a benefit about $90 million, and $90 million you get 650 crore of Indian rupees and about 800 crores of Bangladesh takas and about 1300 crores of Pakistani rupee. That's a huge amount. You can definitely lay a lot of infrastructure if just for 2 MMSCMD of trade, and you benefit by $2 to $3 per MMBTU. You can you can substitute your expensive petroleum products and increase the trade. And these are the kind of benefits for creating. So this is an incentive for creating the infrastructure, which overall you can look at. And now coming to the trade options, well, you have a sale purchase, long term, mid term, or short term. You can straight away enter into the agreements with amongst the countries. You can have master agreement followed by the term sheets. Then you can have lending and borrowing. As I mentioned a while ago, this is just to fine tune your seasonal occurrences of gaps in the demand supply. So when I need, I borrow, and then I return it. Then you can also have the LNG swaps. You can have full cargo swaps, you can have partial cargo swaps, and you can have deferred delivery swaps of cargoes. So this is another option which I think Mr. Garg also mentioned, how sometimes when the terminal is not operational and you have to take the cargoes, then you look to somehow you look for the provisions in the contract, and now to defer it or to change the end use destination. And now the new contracts are all providing it. They're giving these provisions and flexibilities. And the last option is, of course, more collaborative, so that we have shared purchases of cargoes, which can help to curb artificial demand. And this is a very interesting thing. I was discussing with someone. He says that suppose there are, say, 20 terminals or say 15 terminals in these 7-8 countries, particularly India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, and each one of them want part cargo. So these 15 terminals want part cargo. They only want half a cargo, but when they go to the market, they look out for 15 cargoes. But their actual need is only 7.5 cargoes. So what happens is that you create an artificial demand, and the liquidity in LNG market is not that high at the moment, but suddenly the price of the spot market goes up. So this is, you can have collaborative approaches in, making your purchases, unplanned purchases, particularly when you have to go into the spot markets, how much you need. Then the collaborative approach for investment in cross-border pipeline projects. We know that when any trade takes place, it is just not the buyer who benefits or who looks for some gains, it is also the seller. So you have to see how you can collaborate on whatever is the investment, and how both sides can, come together and see that they can invest together in some cross-border pipeline project for some long-term trade. And then another collaborative approach is for trade is, to can have avail tolling via the TPA in the LNG terminals, and the pipeline capacities. You can access the pipeline capacities via contracts or open access, depending upon the regulations or depending upon the bipartite agreements, which can be facilitated by the government or by agencies. Now, in strategic is, of course, one of the participants had raised this question, and well, only once trade matures. So once you begin trade and you reach a maturity level, you have those commercial confidence building measures well entrenched, well dovetailed into the trade, then probably the region can, leverage its bargaining power. So as a region, you know that, okay, now we are there, we are as a group, we are trading, we have platforms. IT can enable very good platforms where the trade can go on. And now as a region, if you have some additional demand and you really want to go in and buy something from the international market, as a region, you can leverage this bargaining power. So this is a very strategic, long-term kind of a vision that we have for the region. And these are the probable plays we thought of. Some probable plays are, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and then India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan. And how these plays come in, I'll just tell you. Now, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Let us first take this. Now, Afghanistan has very close proximity to, Turkmenistan, Iran, and our very gas-rich neighbors. And it also has a share in the TAPI project. From what I could gather was at 500 million cubic meters in the first 10 years per annum, and then 1 billion per annum in the next decade, and 1.5 billion in the next decade. But due to the lack of this pipeline, actually, virtual or small-scale LNG mode from Pakistan can be economical option to fulfill any short-term or mid-term gas requirement. That's what we had seen. So the landed cost for a long-term LNG is expected to be about 17 to 21. We had seen this, and we will again see this. This is how it was, approximate landed cost. And here, actually, we have taken at $80 is the crude price that we assumed, and we took the parity at 12.5. well in good negotiated contracts, it can come down. We took other costs as $2 per MMBTU, road transportation as 4.5. It can also come down depending upon economies of scale. But anyway, you can have bulk supplies going on at 16.5. So you have this thing, but when you compare with the substitutes, the petroleum substitutes, you find arbitrage is not much. It's not there slightly in petrol. But main reason probably is that there is a substantial subsidy on these products. So once the economy stabilizes, political stability gets back in Afghanistan, and the policies on subsidies and prices of petroleum and substitutes they emerge, the potential can further be reviewed. But right now there is some potential for trade that does exist in 10 to 20%. And Pakistan, on the other hand, it would be importing LNG. There already are 2 terminals, and many of them are planned. We had discussed them also. At least 3 of them are there on the website of OGRA, and others are also planned. So there is a possibility. There is also a possibility that Pakistan may implement the NEPRA's indicative generation capacity expansion plan. Now, in this latest plan, 1840, as per which the gas-based generation will decline from about 65 to 70 billion units now. It will come down to just 45 billion units in 25 and 30, and then it will come down to further down in 35, and then further down in 40. So what actually happens is that Pakistan shifts its power generation to nuclear, hydro, renewables, and coal, largely on coal, the coal from the Thar coal fields, which are already under development. So that kind of scenario has been projected, and we have gone through that. And then there is also a possibility that the 2 transnational pipelines, the TAPI and the Iran, may take a little more time. So in that case, how the scenario emerges is that the demand in Pakistan in the reference scenario was like this, demand supply. But now, as per the IGCP, the demand of power sector comes down, and drastically it comes down. And then the gas supplies, if we even if we shift the gas supplies slightly back, so we have a surplus in 2025 if all these terminals come up, and if these terminals operate only at about 75 to 80%. So this is the kind of scenario which can emerge in Pakistan in case IGCP is fully implemented. So 25, you don't actually have, in 30, you are planning to have only about 8,500 megawatts, something like that. That's all gas-based capacity. So all will be F-class machines and latest machines, and all of the other plants will be shut down. So this was the scenario which came up for Pakistan, Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, the demand is there, and in case there is a delay in TAPI, it would have shortfalls. And incidentally, I recently also saw that in Afghanistan, they are planning to bring up a combined cycle power plant, 650 megawatt they have planned. But even if they bring in a good F-class machine and plant capacity is only 350 megawatts, this demand could be much, much more. So it all depends upon the next 4 to 5 years, how the power sector develops. But then there is definitely a demand in Afghanistan which can be met from Pakistan through the small scale virtual LNG or whatever we call it. Then Sri Lanka is now exploring LNG trade options. We know that the Hambantota, they have already planned the Hambantota, which is a deep sea port, very strategically located, midway between Asia Pacific, just perfect midway, and also between the Asia Pacific Gulf, as well as it's also on the sea trade route between Asia Pacific and Europe. So they plan to have just an FSRU based LNG trade terminal, and this terminal can have multiple use, not only for refueling vessels, which of course now with after the IMO 2020 regulations restricting the sulfur to just 0.5% in the bunker fuels, and there has been a spate of orders on propulsion systems that include LNG as well. So this can help. This LNG terminal has been planned. Sri Lanka is also a tie-up with the New Fortress to develop a FSRU near Colombo. So we are seeing that Sri Lanka may have terminals, and Sri Lanka may have LNG capacity in future. And in that case, these, along with the Hambantota, which would be a purely, trade-based terminal, you can think about how to meet the short-term volatility in demand for the subcontinent. Vice versa, Hambantota can also source some surplus LNG cargoes from the subcontinent, from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, to meet any demand volatility. And this will become a very good model provided it really comes up. So, and mutual cooperation like swapping can also help to mitigate the risks of fulfilling contractual obligations if you have a trade terminal very close to your proximity. So this is also what we see as an opportunity for optimizing the utilizations of the LNG terminals. And so we say that the upcoming LNG terminals in Sri Lanka would also offer a lot of potential to catalyze and foster the regional cooperation for LNG. But incidentally, we haven't heard much about Hambantota. I would like to see if some participants from Sri Lanka are able to throw some light. Last, we come to the India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan. Now, this is a play, and why this is there is because when we mapped the demand supply gap scenario of India, we found that with the terminals that are coming up, 41 MMTP is already there, and then we are going to have another 26 or 31 million tons per annum coming up in the next 4 to 5 years, and even with the very nominal supply going up by just about maybe 25 MMSCMD, and the demand where it is. So we take two scenarios. It was the low crude price scenario, where the prices of LNG would be soft and the gas demand would be a little higher than the high crude prices and the high LNG prices and the slightly lower demand scenario. And we found that India is getting slightly surplus here. So this is what, thought that probably this is the right time to think about trade, because the country which was totally all the time short of gas can probably think of becoming gas surplus. And we also looked at the kind of networks which India is planning to develop, because these have been going on for the last 7-8 years, a huge thrust, and the government's policy now shifting from increasing the share of gas from 6% to 15% in the primary energy basket, commercial energy basket. So we looked at the trunk pipelines grids which are coming up, and we found that this is the Barauni-Guwahati pipeline under construction, likely to complete next year. This is the Indradhanush gas grid. Very interesting, the east side. Now, this is coming up very fast. Another 2 years, this should also be completed. And this is going very close to the Bangladesh border on its east. All this Comilla and then all these gas fields of Bangladesh are very nearby. We'll see the map of Bangladesh shortly. This is another approved pipeline which is called the Kanai Chhata Srirampur pipeline, already approved by the PNGRB. And this comes bank right up to the Bangladesh border. Then we have the Gales Haldia pipeline. So the Haldia pipeline is already completed up to Durgapur, and now it is going to be completed. And finally, this pipeline would also come in close proximity to Bangladesh. So the Guwahati pipeline, Barauni-Guwahati, it comes very close to Rangpur and the northwest part of Bangladesh, which is served by PGCL, Paschimachal Gas Company Limited. And this comes very close to the western southern part, which is served by the Sundarbans, SGCL. Then if we look at the infrastructure map of India, we see that in the past 3 to 4 years, the country, the PNGRB, the regulatory board, has awarded the CGD licenses to many entities which are very close to these border states. And particularly if we look whether on the west or on the east or on the northeast side, you find that here we have Bhutan, here we have Nepal. So a lot of these mm, geographical areas have already been awarded to licensees, and we will have a close look at them when we come down just in a while. And then in the 11th round, many of these white geographical areas which you see, which are not yet covered, they are going to be covered in the 11th round. So there's going to be a very good development of the city gas distribution network on the eastern side or the western side or on the northeastern side towards Nepal and towards Bhutan. So we first considered the India-Bangladesh possibilities. We had made this analysis of the demand-supply gaps going by the projections in the modified power system master plan and the gas sector master plan. In two scenarios, I focused only on the two scenarios, 3 and 4. One was in which supply would be as per the realistic 3P plus 6.4 TCF. And the other would be a highly, a very optimistic scenario where the production would be, 3P plus 34 TCF. So this because Bangladesh has very good proximity with some deep sea reserves which are adjacent to Myanmar. And but we did find that in both the scenarios, there are huge shortages coming up. Midterm, there's a shortages coming up. And then and we saw the key drivers of Bangladesh. Just a minute. So we find that Bangladesh is facing decline in production and increase in dependence on LNG imports. India is likely to have surplus volumes. LNG terminals of Bangladesh are in deep south in the Cox's Bazar area. Demand on its north, central, and in particular the western areas near Khulna and up north near Rangpur, they are the areas where potential is. But there are pipeline constraints as all the LNG terminals are in deep south, Cox's Bazar. So both the power system master plan, the gas supply master plan, they have also included proposals of these cross-border pipelines, and I'd also discussed, these Kanai Chhata Shrirampur pipeline, the Jagdishpur Haldia, and the Barauni Guwahati pipeline, and the Indradhanush gas grids. So some of the Indian companies are also working quite closely with Bangladesh for supplying RLNG. And this is what the franchisees are of Bangladesh. SGCL is very close to these are the Khulna and all these areas. They need penetration of gas. Actually, these areas do not have much penetration of gas. Paschim Himachal Gas Company Limited and the Sundarbans Gas Company Limited. More gas is, here in Bangladesh because these were the main gas fields. So I have another slide. These are the main gas fields of Bangladesh. So the gas network is very strong here in this region, and comparatively the penetration is not much. But now they have planned it. Khulna and all they want to. They have planned. They've already, as per some information I got, was they've also completed the feasibility studies for the Khulna to this Khulna arm to connect it to India. Yeah. So this is the gas transmission network which Bangladesh has. As I said, it is more gas consumption is much more in these areas. But then these are the producing areas, and here the Indradhanush gas pipeline grid is coming very close to these areas. And in the north, the Guwahati pipeline is going just here, just 20 kilometers away from the border. It is in very close proximity. And here you have the Kanai Chhata Shrirampur. So Shrirampur is just about here. And then the Haldia pipeline is coming right up to here, Gale Haldia pipeline. Just about another maybe 50-60 kilometers, and it can make it can be connected to the Bangladesh link somewhere here, or maybe to Khulna. These plans have also been proposed in the GSMP for the short term and the long term in the Bangladesh GSMP. They've also been proposed, and as I said, I came to know from some sources that some feasibility studies for this link On the Bangladesh side, they have already completed. Probably they are waiting for the right price and the right cost of gas probably to go forward. Nepal, India, we had discussed earlier also, economic benefits do exist in substituting diesel, and at least 4 of the 7 provinces of Nepal can benefit. So these provinces are also the most populous ones. We had analyzed them, and border areas with India are covered, and the virtual LNG pipeline can be implemented. And later we can have small pipelines. So we had seen what kind of arbitrage exists if you go in for even the small scale or the virtual LNG model. These are the kinds of benefits which can come. I think we had seen this slide before also. And this is what we had analyzed. What are the provinces in Nepal and what are the populations and what are the densities? And we picked up the highest density, and they were in very close proximity to Indian cities. These are the Indian cities, and these are the Nepalese provinces with the highest population density, and the distances are uh, very proximate. I mean, they are not very much like for province number 1, the distance is as low as 51 kilometers, and these distances are actually from the state headquarters of these geographical areas. Whereas actually the pipelines, when it will be laid for distribution, they would be coming in much closer proximity than these distances with the Nepal border. So this is one exercise we had made. Similar exercise we had done for Bhutan, because Bhutan is surplus in hydropower. So we saw that when we compared the cost of heat in the alternate fuels, there was very limited potential to switch to natural gas in terms of volume also. And then the country is very keen to switch to EVs. Now the country is coming up with at least I think about 2,000 or 3,000 megawatt more of hydropower that's going to be commissioned. So there would be so much of electric power in Bhutan that they have already planned, and probably someone told me or I read somewhere that 300 EVs have already been ordered, and they are probably planning in Bhutan for. But then uh, all the border areas with India are covered, and virtual LNG supply can be beneficial for the consumers of the bulk diesel and commercial LPG. And probably once this is how what we had compared, comparison of the cost of thermal energy, we found that the virtual LNG can be made available for the bulk and for the retails, and it compares quite well with it competes pretty well, and there's significant arbitrage. Even on the commercial cylinders, there could be an arbitrage on, and there is what makes, what can be used by Bhutan. Bhutan can benefit from this. They can change the diesel and they can also go in for commercial, because Bhutan has a limited quota of subsidized LPG. And they have a huge population living in far-flung areas. And although the urbanization in Bhutan is very high, but it is only about 40%. So they can do by, the social distribution of LPG cylinders can be made to the far-flung areas, and probably in the cities and the towns which they have, they can probably use, these commercial cylinders. This is the analysis we did for the Dzongkhags of Bhutan. We mapped the population, and we mapped the density, and we also mapped the distances within Bhutan and from Jalpaiguri and from Bongaigaon, which would be getting access sometime in 2022. So when the Barauni Guwahati pipeline would be completed. So this is an exercise we did. Now Maldives can have options can be from barges from Kochi, or in future they can look up to Sri Lanka LNG terminals. And then of course this we have also discussed gas hubs. Mr. Garg had spoken about it. He talked about the development of a gas exchange. Now this can also be can be a fulcrum to further the opportunity for commencement of trade. Of course, once the gas exchange it matures. So the benefits we had all seen, the price discovery is transparent, and with many LNG terminals coming up in India in the next 3 to 4 years, the liquidity on the exchange is expected to go up. So with very small cross-border pipeline connectivity, or even the cross-border virtual LNG supply chain solutions, we can meet, in a very transparent and affordable manner, we can meet. And probably in the long term, there can be a small connectivity beyond Myanmar. But then Myanmar has faced a lot of reversals in its domestic production. And this will have to wait probably to see if some more discoveries are made. So these are all key enablers for, creating a South Asian pipeline networks which can foster the trade. So I think that is about all. Thank you so much for being so patient. Thanks. I'll take any questions, Asanji.
Thank you very much, Swami Sir, for presentation. So we would quickly move on to question answers, but first we have a request from Swami Sir, we have with us now member gas from Agra, the respected Mohammad Arif Sir, and he would like to say a few words, or maybe share some comments or something like that. So over to respected Arif Sir.
Thank you very much, Asan. I'm really obliged to have this opportunity, and especially extend my very sincere thanks to the very able, panel of the speakers we had, during this week. The entire course and content of the same were really, enriched enough, which provided us sufficient additional knowledge to which even most of us were not even aware previously. Okay. We have recently, comparatively, we have started our LNG import. We're struggling with increasing its intake by, installing more FSRUs, and also we have one proposal of land-based LNG terminal, and we do hope to we do hope that the contents which were shared by your able team would be, very beneficial. As you can see from the picture, our two departments are basically requested, both my department, gas and LNG, which are, I requested all of them to be present during this. Everybody was so dedicated. Everybody listened the content of all the presentations so deeply. They were very interesting, and the time provided to this it was also very conducive and sort of manageable. This did not affected any of our working, because just 2-3 hours taking break out within our own office was an amazing sort of opportunity to learn. I would definitely like to acknowledge and appreciate and extend my sincere thanks to Dr. A.K. Polan, Mr. Rajiv Mathur, Mr. Swami Dayal Prasad, and R.K. Garg Sahab. Of course, last but not least, Dr. Nawaz Beg, who also spoke and is our, the Director General at Gas and Ministry of Petroleum. It was really a great sort of opportunity. Probably I had, maybe first opportunity of this kind to basically to attend to this type of online interactive session. It was very well coordinated, and I would like to really extend my very sincere thanks to the SAARC Directorate and SN, who have very ably and very professionally managed this. There has been no IT issues at all whatsoever. There have been no timing issues whatsoever. Everything went very smooth. And with this, I hope and see that we will be working together, listening together, and I think educating each other, and we have that deficiency more than any other country. I would personally admit that. Look forward to basically work together. And one of my questions that we definitely need to look for, creating some sort of what you call it, supply source, a collective supply source initiative, so that we are able to mitigate or ensure sustainable gas supplies, which are definitely seriously short in this part of the country, in this part of the world, I would say. So we all need to work on that side first, and before we moving on to the other stages of creating LNG exchanges and gas exchanges and hubs, and the creating further. We are not really that far behind in creating enabling environment for participation of private investors. Surprisingly, we have already taken initiatives which are moving towards creating this, without naming it, creating this, the gas market hub or exchange in a way that we are moving towards creating single gas transport transmission network company, gas transmission company, which will be, other than the shippers and transport, that will only be a transporter. We are also bringing in private investors who will buy, import their own gas and sell their own gas to the consumer at the price which will not be controlled by the government or the regulator. We will definitely keep an eye on the tariffs, on the transportation tariff, and that is it. Apart from that, the input cost and the sale price shall not be actually controlled by neither the government nor the regulator. So that is a very big opportunity for all the private investors to come into Pakistan and uh, invest and grow and progress and expand their business, especially those who have passion for gas market sort of side of the business. So having said that, again, I would just like to say big thanks to all of you. It was a pleasure, and look forward to have similar more opportunities. Thank you so much. Thank you, Asan.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your kind words. Definitely, SAARC Energy Center is at your disposal and the disposal of other national agencies of other SAARC member states. Whenever you would like to have some kind of this intervention, if you have some topic of interest, we would definitely try to engage and get involved and try to organize more trainings and more workshop webinars on topics of your interest. So with this, I would move on to Swami Saab and Ashok Saab. Would you like to comment on something?
Yeah, I think first of all, just to sum up the entire proceedings of our last 5 days, first of all, I'd like to, on behalf of all my faculty members here, Sri Swami Prasad, Mr. Rajiv Mathur, and Mr. Garg, really convey our sincere thanks to the SAARC Energy Center, particularly the director, Dr. Nawaz, Deputy Director, Mr. Tanveer, and also Ehsan Saab, for very professionally organizing it and also conducting the program. I think for us also it was a wonderful experience, and we are much more sort of better placed now to really address if there are so many specific areas that are needed for any deliberation and discussions. I think the program, which was spread over almost 11 sessions, comprised of all aspects of energy. Particularly when we see today, very briefly, I'll take about 8-10 minutes time. When you talk about energy and choosing energy today is not a simple thing. It's a very complex issue because of the associated, as I said, energy is not just in terms of dollar or cents. It has political, social, economic implications also. And right now, much more than that is the environmental impact of that. So when you really choose what energy source you are going to use, you need to really take into consideration all that aspects and the trends that are happening in the world, that we are moving towards a much cleaner, cheaper, better energy source. And in that perspective, natural gas and LNG have definitely assumed much more greater importance. And I'm happy that in the SAARC region as well, whether it's Pakistan, India, other countries, they're really moving and giving more importance of moving to cleaner natural gas as their choice of energy. We need to do much more as a region, actually. we discussed about key challenges, global strategy on how the companies are doing, what are the demand supply scenario on that. On the gas requirement, I think we see worldwide we have a comfort that for almost a century to come, there are enough sufficient gas resources and reserves available, which would perhaps mean that we will have continued supply of LNG and gas in the world. And we see the growth in the LNG field, where we were the quantities of LNG that has been produced, more countries are coming, major projects are coming up, the capacities are going up. Similarly, more countries are moving towards importing LNG, more regasification terminals are coming up. More than 40 countries are now having capability to import gas, which is a very welcome sign actually. There are a lot of technological developments. We discussed about the regasification, the liquefaction. We talked about the LNG trade, where we see that the trades starting from very small quantities have grown to almost 850 million tons per year kind of a capacity is there. We talked about the shipping, and we see that from a initial period of just smaller ships, 25,000 cubic meters, we have moved up to 260,000 cubic meters, Qmaxes, and the industry has sort of optimized the size to about 170,000 cubic meter size. Also on the containment systems, a lot of technological advantages and advancements have taken place. From a previous lower efficiency insulation and containment system, today we have very efficient membrane type, where the boil-offs, loss of the gas in the form of vapor, can be really minimized. Wonderful advancements. Then we talked about the pricing, which is a very complex issue in the LNG this thing, which really calls for that in LNG field we require, and we see that not much of transparency is there. Contracts are there, the trades are increasing, but then transparency is missing. We don't know really exactly what are the LNG contracts and pricing structures are there. And I think slowly there is some amount of transparency also coming up with some of the companies and countries taking initiative of sharing their contract, whether spot or some long term. So I think this is a welcome sign, and I think the LNG trade is really moving, business is moving towards a desired level. We talked about contracts of liquefaction, contracts of gas sales, the contract for storage, pipeline transportation contracts, ably conveyed by Mr. Rajiv Mathur, Mr. Garg. Several aspects of the energy, the emerging market of FSRU, and we see a wonderful sign that in SAARC region, this is becoming a popular, with Pakistan taking a lead, and also looking at India and even Sri Lanka working on FSRU. We also talk about gas supply, distribution, pipeline network connectivity, and overall how to regulate the entire gas and LNG sector. What is the role of the government? Why do we need a regulator, and what kind of a role a regulator has? We all discussed on this, and today we also talked about a unique thing which is happening and developing in SAARC region, where India has made a first Indian gas exchange, how it is working, what are the salient features of that. This is a modern state of LNG and gas trading now, and I think we are taking lead. And as Mr. Muhammad Iqbal said, that we have perhaps created all kinds of parameters in the SAARC region to move ahead. We are also moving, to my mind, a more mature market. I think this is a time when perhaps a more closer collaboration within the SAARC region can perhaps foster gas business and LNG business strongly. There was a wonderful presentation by Rajiv on the possibility of collaboration. Mr. Swami Dayal Prasad on the areas of collaboration. I think some of the initiatives that are already in planning stage need to perhaps move ahead on that. I definitely see that why a terminal in India, which has a tolling capacity, cannot be used by other countries. I see definitely in time to come this may be possible. Or if a country has a better gas supply system and has a surplus, why the other country in the SAARC region cannot really use that and mutually agreed in terms conditions. I think it augurs very well, and there are several options. And I said that the pipeline connectivity should not be seen as just a pipeline connectivity between these nations. It would be a power connectivity. It would be an industrial corridor where many activities can take place. And that I see perhaps the SAARC region has the potential to compete and grow like Europe, where you have so fine connectivity and flexibility in commuting, in sharing all the benefits, and even the poverty also in some of the areas as well. So I am very happy and like to, at the end of this, thank you very much again, the SAARC Center, for organizing it, thinking it, my compliments. And on behalf of the faculty, I'm very happy and thank you very much, SAARC Center. If anybody of the faculty please like to share, welcome to make any points.
I just wanted to add, I think you have rightly summed up everything. So we are really very thankful, and we have enjoyed during these 5 days totally with this program, and we were also enlightened, because so many things that we know that's happening, but when you have to present, you have to prepare yourself and present well so that the audience can understand better. So this has helped us also to improve some of our knowledge, and we are thankful to the member from OGRA and their team, and especially listening to us. And Swamidal has mentioned about so many good things happening in Pakistan, especially on regulation front. That is also we could understand when preparing for the session. So that's, I think, otherwise we are not aware that what is happening in other part of the country, very close neighbor of us. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Ehsanji. I think it was a pleasure, and also thanks to Dr. Nawaz Ahmed to pursuing this course and providing us the opportunity to be there. Thank you very much.
So I would also like to thank the SAARC Energy Center and Ehsan Saab in particular, and all the other members and the OGRA team and all the delegates for patiently listening to us. And we also learned a lot during our interactions. And I'm sure we'll have many more opportunities going forward to interact with each other. So thank you very much once again.
Saad, you want to say something?
I would like to first express my sincere thanks to the SAARC Energy Center, and I truly acknowledge the kind of leadership they have taken in dissemination of whatever is the professional knowledge or experience amongst all the professionals, and that was indeed very noble of you to have thought of it. And on our part, as so ably put by Gargji, we had to really make effort to see that we are able to live up to some kind of minimum content delivering standards. So that is what we really had to struggle. And of course, there were great learnings during the process. We learned a lot about, of course, OGRA we had been seeing for a long time. It has been the pioneer. I remember when we had those discussions on HELP and OALP. We looked to the OGRA regulations, and we found that they were much more inviting, much more investor friendly. But then this opportunity, we had to again look back into how OGRA is doing, how the Pakistan's energy sector is doing, how NEPRA is planning out, phasing out things. And it was really a good experience to know about it. About Bangladesh also, we had to go through the gas sector master plan and the power system master plan and the modified whatever they are planning now, which has come out in the BPDP's annual report. So how they are planning to take the gas sector forward. So it was very interesting to know about all the neighboring countries which are there. Bangladesh is deeply entrenched. It figures in the top 5 of the global countries which have the highest share of gas as their primary energy source. So that is where Bangladesh is. And Pakistan, which was the leader, it started as early as 85, has such a wonderful, pricing mechanism. Everything is so well regulated in Pakistan. So it has all the potential to, and the way they have deliberated over and, ensured that they have a tolling-based LNG terminal. So the business model of a tolling-based LNG terminal probably has been, but that terminal came up in practically, I came to know it came up in just 13 months. So that again spells out the kind of confidence the investor had in the overall environment which had been created in the country. So overall, it was a wonderful experience going through these last 5 days, and I'm very thankful on behalf of my team. I'm thankful to Dr. Balian, who is as a veteran of the sector. He's been a director of ONGC. He has been he said that he has some great achievements, and he was here to lead all three of us to see that we are able to deliver this up to his standards also. So thank you, Dr. Balian. Thank you, SAARC Energy Center once again and thank you, Dr. Nawaz ji. Your presentation was wonderful. And
we would thank you very much, Swami Saab. Now we would request Dr.
Ahsan sir, just one point that should there be any other clarification, modification, or information that is needed by any of the participants or this thing, please do feel free to write to us, and we'll be happy to substantiate and share information in future. Yeah, just one.
Surely, so after Director Saab's speech, I would just announce it after his speech. And over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahsan, for conducting this training online sessions. And before I formally read my closing remarks, general comments, I would like to appreciate, the entire team, trainers team from India, everyone, Dr. Ashok, Balian, Swami, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, R.K. Garg, appreciate your, efforts, your, in-depth knowledge, and the way you delivered your contents to the participants. Very impressive. Training was very structured, and we appreciate your all efforts. You brought very in-depth knowledge for, the participants, and ultimately for the benefit of this SAARC region in the, growing and dynamic LNG sector. So LNG is filling the gap of energy, between the demand and supply. So far in the SAARC region, we have been dependent on, the no doubt fossil fuel, like imports of liquid fuels, mainly the oil. Now it is a time of transition, mainly driven by, scarcity of supplies of fossil fuels, no doubt in the form of oil. But there is transition driven by the climate change. So LNG provides that opportunity to, circumvent the emissions, to tackle the problems of climate change, and keep our environment protected. So LNG sector is not only, globally, but as well as in the SAARC region, it is a growing sector, and ultimately it have to fill the gap up to at least 4 or 5 decades to come. So LNG sector is very vibrant internationally, but it is very, complex supply chain. So the abilities and, the requirement of handling the supply chain, it is very demanding. So this training, I hope, for very beneficial to provide the in-depth knowledge of the entire supply chain, starting from the production of LNG and shipping. You covered, cover the pricing mechanism, like hedging, like downstream, issues we tackled, especially yesterday knowledge sessions on the virtual pipeline. All the aspects were very, helpful and very important. And now the role of policy maker as well as the regulator is becoming very important in handling this very modern LNG supply chain. and especially I see a lot of team from OGRA. I'm very thankful for their very extended participation and very, good questions and participation during this course of, training event. So thank you very much, you all. Just now, I formally want to read my closing remarks. Dear participants and presenters of the training, good afternoon. I am very thankful to all the experts and delegates from the member states who had participated in this 5 days training event. There is increasing focus globally as well as in the SAARC member states on the use of LNG to meet energy needs in a sustainable and relatively cleaner way. Recognizing the growing importance and role of LNG in the overall energy sector of SAARC member states, SAARC Energy Center has organized this online training program to enhance the capacity of professionals in the LNG sector. In this training, we had experts from India who had delivered presentations and conducted interactive discussions on various aspects of LNG sector. The training had covered various aspects of LNG sector, including documents, fundamentals of LNG, global markets and trade, supply chain, sales and purchase agreements, commercial and legal aspects of the LNG sector. I hope each one of us have benefited from the course of this training and will be able to contribute in the development of LNG sector in the SAARC region in future. I would like to thank again all the Indian experts, including Dr. Balyan, Mr. Swami, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, Mr. R.K. Garg, for sharing their knowledgeable and expertise with the participants throughout the event. I am very thankful to all the participants and representatives from the government agencies, academia, energy experts, and practitioners from the national organizations for sparing your time and actively contributing in various training sessions. Thank you all again. Now, I would like to have few comments from OGRA and all the trainers again if you want to say a few words. So first I would like to invite the OGRA. Thank you. Yes.
Sorry.
You are muted,
Correct. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Vic. I just wanted to make a suggestion at this point of time. No further comments. We, apart from really appreciating our 5 days engagement with very deep knowledge, wanted to make a suggestion that maybe in next round of this type of engagement with SAARC member countries, probably we should actually engage all the regulatory authorities so that every regulatory authority give an update of the already existing regulatory framework and ongoing reforms. So maybe that should be the next sort of round of discussion, and we'll be pleased to, OGRA shall be pleased to, do that, and maybe we can dedicate 1 day for each regulatory authority 2-3 hours and go on, and so that all the member countries at least have knowledge of what is going on in other, and we can share our regulatory framework wherever required. We can learn from each other, because at the end of the day, when it comes to the gas sector reforms, restructuring, market development, all that depend on the effectiveness, completeness, and detail of the regulations we create day by day. So I think that is my suggestion, with which I wanted to close with many thanks to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think Araf Saab was speaking a very good suggestion, and we will try to arrange some like similar session with the help of the trainers or in consultation with the respective regulators in the SAARC region. Thank you very much for your very valuable input. So yes, anyone
final comments from Balyan Saab, Mathur
Yeah.
Saab, otherwise we'll just go on with closing this session.
I think thank you very much. It has been wonderful journey so far, and very professionally conducted there. My thanks to the center again, SAARC Center, and Dr. Nawaz particularly his guidance on that. And to you, Ahsan Saab, wonderfully conducted with all your experience. We can see a very professional way of working. Thank you very much, and my compliments to the SAARC Center.
Thank you very much, Rian Sab. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving towards closing this online training program. I would just like to announce to all the participants that all the presentations are already uploaded on our website. You can download those presentations from there. Additionally, we have also uploaded the recorded links of these online training. Each day training link is also available on our website, so you can watch those training sessions at your leisure time. Plus, if you have any other questions or any other comments you would like to ask any questions, you can still send it to us and we will forward your request or questions to the experts and they will respond to those questions. They are all available for you. And with that, I would like to formally close this training program with your permission.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. God bless you and have a nice day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.